We're sitting in Coeur homes, wonderful place in our town, warm, friendly people all the way around. Before we get started, I got to tell you this little story. There was a man who lived in a neighborhood, and the entire neighborhood was populated by Catholics, and he was a Baptist. Now, it worked fine, except on Fridays. All the Catholics are having their fish, and he's out barbecuing steak. And the aroma went out through the entire town, and everybody was so upset, and they worked on it for years till one day they converted him, and he became a Catholic. And so he goes to the Catholic Church, and the priest stands over him, and he does his thing, and he says, "You were born a Baptist, you were raised a Baptist." But he sprinkles him, he says, "Now you're a Catholic." Well, that Friday, he's out barbecuing steak. And the whole town shows up to find out what's going on. And they see him with the steak, and he's looking at it and says, "You were born a cow, you were raised a cow, but now you're a fish." My name is Pastor Jim Hoggett. I pastor Coeur d'Alene Open Bible. And today we want to talk about the origin of words, where words came from. It's called etymology. And we're thinking about batteries a little while ago, talking about a set of batteries that had just gone down, and it reminded me of Ben Franklin. Now, I'm going to tell you this little story first before we get to there. I think the Revolutionary War was just crazy. All the English came up, and they would line their people up in rows, and you just sit there and pot shot at them, and our guys would go and hide behind trees and logs, and boy, they just won the war because they had all these people just standing there waiting to be shot at. And what they called it was a battery. So when Ben Franklin had his idea, he had this thing that they would do with static electricity. They found that they could take static electricity and put it in a jar and contain it, and then they could discharge it later. And so he found that if he took several of the static electricity jars and put them together in a row, it reminded him of the military thing, so he called it the battery. You ever play marbles when you were a kid? You're getting ready to play marbles. And so you get down to the ground, and you're getting ready to shoot. And so you are ready to knuckle down. In the old days, they would have these theater shows and bars and things, and they had a spotlight. It'd be on the main stage, and they would take something like a bottle of whiskey, and they would put it in front of the spotlight, something like this, and they would shine the light through the spotlight so that the person who's on the stage, it gave them a little bit of a color. Now, often the main stage is here, but you'd have someone sitting off to the side, and he'd be entertaining the people in between the acts as the acts would change. And sometimes the stories that he told were not really good stories. They were not G-rated. And so it was known for being off color. In the old days, you had sailing ships. And originally, a rudder had not been invented yet. They would take one of the oars. And since most of the guys were right-handed, they would take one of the oars and they put it off to the right side of the boat and actually steer the boat using that oar. And that became the starboard. You ever hear bite the bullet? Someone's getting ready to have an operation and they haven't got any anesthesia, so maybe they're out in the field in the middle of battle and they're looking around for a stick. You know, often you'd put a stick in a guy's mouth before you did this operation. But if you didn't have one, you would take a bullet. And he would take that bullet and he'd put it in his mouth and they'd do the operation. So he is biting the bullets. You know, I think high heels are one of the dumbest kind of shoes ever been invented. I bet you they were invented by somebody who didn't like females. It turns out that high heels have two origins. One, they were invented in Egypt. And the people who invented them were the butchers. And it kept their feet up off of the stuff that was on the floor. The second one was in China. They put high heels and they would let their concubines wear them, so they had these high heels so they couldn't run away. The last thing we want to talk about is apples. We don't know if Adam and Eve actually had an apple. We know it was some kinds of fruit, but they say that the apple, Eve's, when she bit her apple, it went all the way down her throat, but Adam, it's stuck in the middle, and so males have an Adam's apple. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but God put Adam to sleep to make Eve, and he took one of the ribs. And I just think this is so cool. Science has proven that women have 14 ribs and men have 13 ribs. Okay, we'll pick this up next week. Thank you.